So friends, as we discussed that Scodella method also had certain limitations, like method was slow since it was manual, it was labor oriented, and it gave a low yield of the oil. Scodella method was then further modified into Ecule's method. Now, the only difference between Scodella and Ecule method is the apparatus that is used, and there was a slight modification in that apparatus. In Scodella, we use a bowl having pointed or blunt spikes on the inner wall. In Ecule method, we have similar kind of apparatus, but it has a vertical tube that is attached to the bottom of the vessel, as you can see in the picture. And therefore, sometimes in literature you will see that Scodella method and Ecule method are used interchangeably or synonymously. So again, the process is same. The endocarp portion of the fruit is removed from the peel. Peel is separated. It is dipped in lukewarm or warm water in order to loosen up or to make the peel more soft and to open up the pores that are present on the peel. Then the peel is manually rubbed on these blunted spikes that are present on the inner wall of the apparatus, and whatever the oil that is released after rupturing of the oil cell, it trickles down to the center of the apparatus and from there through the tube into the container. And again the spikes or the blunted ends or the raised portion abrasions on the surface are washed with water in order to remove any oil that has been stuck to these abrasions. And later on the oil is separated from the water because the oil is immiscible in water. Density of the two is different. Water is generally heavy than volatile oils, so water will settle down and we can separate the oil from water. Now we move on to the industrial or the mechanical method, and these methods can be categorized into four different techniques like spumatrice and special spumatrice method. Then we have the latrice method, then FMC inline process, which is also known as food machinery corporation process, because this process was developed by Food Machine Corporation. Then we have brown method or brown oil extractors. Brown oil extractors are nothing, again it's a company in Manchester, United Kingdom, which developed this method. So coming on to the first mechanical method, that is spumatrice method. Now this is a method wherein only the peels of the fruits are used once the juice has been extracted from the fruit, and then the peels are subjected to the method to extract out the oil. And the most common extractor used in this method is Ramino spumatrice, wherein the peels are subjected to this machine, and this machine contains a chain that is tied with horizontal rollers. Now the major function of these rollers is to draw the fruit peels towards the pressing rollers. So once it's you can say that it's a type of conveyor belt type of arrangement, wherein when the chain is being pulled, these rollers rotate and they will move the peels towards the pressing rollers. Now these pressing rollers, again they have spiked projections or abrasions on their surface. So whenever the peel passed between these pressing rollers, these spikes, blunt spikes or abrasions, they will press those peels. By pressing, they will disrupt the oil glands, and as soon as the oil glands are disrupted, the volatile oil is released. Now this process simultaneously is attached with another process wherein a mist of water is sprinkled onto these pressing rollers. Now the major function of this sprinkling of water mist is to wash out these abrasions, so that whatever oil that has been or whatever debris that has been stuck to these abrasion, it gets continuously washed out. So once the oil is released, it is washed with water and is collected into the suitable container that is placed below the pressing rollers. There is another approach to this sfumatrici method wherein the superficial layer of the peel is peeled off. Now this process or this peeling of the superficial layer further help in exposing the oil glands, and this also helps in the reaching of those blunt spikes or abrasions deep into the deep situated oil glands. This further helps in improving the overall oil yield, and rest of the process is same as that of sfumatrici method. Another modification of sfumatrici method is the special sfumatrici method. Now it is largely done because we know that citrus fruits contain citric acid as well, and these citrus oils are rich in aldehydes also, aldehydic compounds also, whether terpene aldehydes or aliphatic aldehydes. Now whenever these aldehyde components come in contact with that citric acid, they get degraded, thereby changing the overall color and odor of the oil. So in order to overcome this difficulty, sfumatrici method was slightly modified in the name of special sfumatrici method. Now in this method, the peels are first soaked in a lime solution for 24 hours. Now this lime solution will help in neutralizing the citric acid, thereby attenuating its effect on the aldehydic components. Now once the citric acid is neutralized, then these peels are subjected to the pressing rollers to extract out the oil. Now while pressing, because when you expose the peel towards lime solution, this will loosen up the wax that is also present in the peel. So once the peels are exposed to lime solution, and then they are pressed, this expression also causes the extraction of the waxy material from the peels. So and in order to remove that waxy material from the oil is refrigerated so that the wax gets freeze, and from there the oil is separated. Now the second mechanical method or industrial method is the Pilatrisi method, and this method is different from sfumatrici method in terms that it utilizes the whole fruit, not only the peels but the whole fruit is used in this method, whereas in sfumatrici method first the juice was extracted from the fruit and then the peels were used. But in this method we can use the entire fruit, and this method contains two steps. The oil is first removed, and then in the second step juice is removed. This is another difference from the sfumatrici method, wherein first the juice was removed and then the exhausted endocarp or the pericarp region of the fruit was subjected towards the extraction of the oil. Now as you can see in the picture on the left, this shows the machine, that is the Pilatrisi machine, which is having a hopper which is used to introduce the fruit into the machine. And on the picture on the right side you will see small a big screw which is having metal sheets on it. Now these screw is nothing but an Archimedean screw type arrangement which is largely present in the horizontal portion of the machine, and the metal plates that are attached on this Archimedean screw, it has large number of blunt spikes or abrasions on the surface. Now once the fruits are introduced, entire fruits are introduced through the hopper into the machine, this screw is rotated, and once it is rotated, the fruits come in contact with these metal plates having abrasion on them. This causes the scrapping of the epicarp, rupturing of the oil cells, and release of the volatile oils. Now during this whole process, a stream of water is sprinkled, continuously sprinkled on this Archimedean screw, and this helps in removing the vegetative debris and the oil that has been stick on the abrasion. And the mixture of oil and water is then collected at the base container. You can see on the in the picture on the left side of your screen, and then this mixture is filtered and the water is separated from the oil. Now once the oil is removed, the fruits are then subjected to another expression portion that is present in the machine, and there the juice from these fruits is being extracted out. Third method is the brown process, and it is largely used in North and South American countries, and this method is considered somewhat similar to that of Volatile method, wherein spiked rollers move in the same direction as well as in the horizontal direction. Whatever fruits are placed on these rollers, they are submerged in water, so no sprinkling of water is there in this process. They are slightly submerged in water so that the oil and water mixture is as such obtained. Now as you can see in this image, there are different cups, and these cups are of different sizes. So the only additional step in this process is we have to segregate the fruits before they are exposed to brown process on the basis of the cup size that are present in the machine. Because if too large fruit is exposed to those cups, then incomplete expression will be there, substantial loss of the oil will be there. And if too small fruit is placed in that cup, then the expression pressure will be large for that small fruit, and the oil will get mixed with the juice. So therefore the appropriate size of the fruit has to be segregated on the basis of the size of the cup that is present in the equipment. Now this method was slightly modified, or I will say not the method but the machine was slightly modified in order to make the process more fast, in order to remove this segregation step, and this machine was known as Garozzo machine. Though it works on the same principle as that of the Brown method, but the design was slightly modified in order to, as I told you, in order to remove the step of the segregation of the fruit on the basis of the size. Now this machine, as you can see in this picture, largely contains a conveyor belt type of arrangement, and this conveyor belt has a special floor which contains again spikes or abrasions on the surface as well as on the side walls, and this conveyor belt is further attached to a vibrator. So whenever fruits are placed on this conveyor belt is lowered or submerged in a shallow water layer, then the vibrator is switched on. Now as soon as the vibrator is switched on, the fruits get vibrate, they start moving into horizontal and vertical direction, as well as they start rolling on the conveyor belt. And once they start moving and rolling on the conveyor belt, the abrasions or the spikes that are present on the side walls as well as on the floor of the conveyor belt, they rupture the oil cells present in the peels, thereby releasing the volatile oil. And since the fruits are submerged in a shallow layer of water, we get a mixture of oil and water. So once the oil is extracted from the peels, the second step is the conveyor belt leads to the pressing machine where the fruits are pressed to remove the oil. So this is how volatile oils are expressed, or they are extracted by using the Brown's method. This was further modified by Food Machinery Corporation into FMC whole fruit method, and this was largely an inline method. Again, this method is largely used in America, and according to an estimate, more than 50% of the companies that are dealing with essential oils or citrus fruit juices, they use FMC inline method. The major advantage of FMC inline method is that the oil as well as the juice of the fruit, they are extracted simultaneously without their mixing, which makes this process highly efficient and very fast in comparison to Brown method or sfumatoric or pilatoric method. Again, major problem is prior segregation of the fruit is required on the basis of their size, because this machine has different cup sizes. As you can see in this picture, there are arrangement of 4 different cups in the bottom and 4 different cups on the upper side. Now the bottom cups are fixed, whereas the lower cups are movable. As you can see, the lower cups have vertical projections, whereas the upper cups, they have small spikes. These vertical projection and small spikes, they form an intermeshing arrangement. So whenever the upper cup lowers down onto the lower cup, the spikes on the upper cup, they fit perfectly into the vertical projections that are present onto the lower cup, making an intermesh arrangement. So fruits of appropriate sizes according to the size of the cup, they are placed on the lower portion of or the lower cups. Now, once the fruits are placed on the lower cups, a knife is there which is present on the lower side at the center of the lower cups. This knife will make a hole in the lower portion of the fruit. Once the hole is being created in each and every fruit, the upper cups start moving towards the lower cup. Now once they come into contact with the fruit, they start exerting pressure onto the fruit. Now with this pressure, what happens on the outer side of the fruit, the peel get pressed, the oil cells get ruptured and the oil is released. Whereas on the inner side of the fruit, the endocarp region, which is largely filled with the juice cells, it also get pressurized and the juice cells get ruptured. The juice is released and the juice is released through the hole that is prepared, that is made by the knife at the bottom of the fruit. So juice exits the fruit from the bottom hole, whereas the oil which is present on the outer side of the peel is washed with the water. So both the processes, extraction of juice as well as extraction of the oil, goes simultaneously without getting mixing to each other. Now there are different, as I told you, different cup sizes are available, 3, 5, 8. So depending upon your requirement, the size of the fruits that are available in your region, you can select the appropriate size of the cup and you can fit and you can use FMC inline method to extract out juice as well as the oil. Since both processes are simultaneously occurring, this method is considered as one of the most efficient methods to extract out oil from the citrus fruits. Now we move on to another distillation technique, another extraction technique, traditional extraction technique, that is distillation. And the term distillation has been derived from a Latin word distillare, which means trickling down. And we know that distillation, since ages, this process has been used to separate liquids, miscible liquids, which have difference in their boiling point. But still this technique is largely used, one for obvious reason, to separate out the miscible liquids, and then it is also used to extract out oil from different raw materials. When we talk about the extraction of oil using distillation, then the difference in the density of the volatile oil and water, and also difference in the boiling point of water and oil, is exploited while extracting oil by using distillation. And since oil and water have different densities, a two-phase system is generated by which we can easily separate out volatile oil from the water. Now in this picture you can clearly see a traditional setup, distillation setup for extracting volatile oil. we can see two types of container: a larger container, which is known as a still, which contains the raw material along with water, and it is heated from beneath, and this larger still is attached by a tube arrangement which enters into a small vessel, and this small round vessel is placed in a rectangular area which is filled with water. So whenever the larger still is heated, water gets boiled, oil is released, oil also get evaporated, the vapors of oil and water pass through the tube, enters into a small round vessel which is placed in a rectangular cavity filled with water, which condenses these vapors, and later on the oil can be separated from the water. This picture shows you another arrangement of this traditional distillation unit. This is an on-field distillation unit, wherein a larger unit contains again the raw material and water. It is attached to a drum which is filled with water, and this drum again contains a smaller vessel which is attached to the tubing which comes from the larger still. So once the vapor enter into the small vessel which is submerged in water that is present in the drum, the vapors get condensed, and you can clearly see in the picture there is another small tube that originates from the drum. Now this tube originates from the small vessel that is placed in the drum, and from this, once the distillation is over, we open this tube at the bottom, and we can remove the water first, and then we can collect the oil in the suitable container. Now this picture show you the slight modification of traditional distillation unit, wherein the heating part is carried out by an electrical unit, whereas in case of previous images you can see heating was largely done with the help of wood as a fuel, whereas in this method electric heaters are used to heat up the distillation still, and rest of the process is same. Now before we subject our raw material towards distillation, first we have to prepare our material for distillation. We have to ensure that the raw material should be in appropriate condition so that we are able to remove maximum oil in shortest time period. And we can prepare this material by size reduction. Size reduction can be either by chopping the raw material or cutting the raw material, or by slight powdering the raw material. Now whenever we expose the raw material towards size reduction and the size of the raw material is reduced, this ensures proper packing of the distillation still. No large spaces or lacunas are left out in the still, which can create a water pocket or a hydro pocket into that still, because this will again make the distillation process non-uniform, and we are going to lose substantial amount of the oil in both in terms of quality as well as quantity. If you want to extract out volatile oil from certain fruits or seeds like coriander, fennel, caraway, then we should partially crush them, because while crushing will make the oil glands exposed to the distillation conditions, and we can easily extract out the volatile oil in very short period. Drying is another step that is required. Drying either completely dried or it can be partially dried, because this will help in reducing the time of water entering into the plant matrix if your material is partially dried. So this also improves the overall extraction efficiencies. There are certain materials which require special treatment before distillation, like bitter almond, mustard or wintergreen. Now all the oils from these raw material, they are present largely in the glycosidic form. So first we have to hydrolyze those glycosides in order to release the A-glycon moiety, and then we can extract out with distillation process. So for such material we have to expose those materials, we have to dip those material in water for specified period of time in order to allow the hydrolysis of the glycosides, and then we can expose them to distillation. Now we move on to the types of distillations. that are used to extract out volatile oil. As I told you, these are water or hydro distillation. We have water and steam distillation, then only steam distillation, and the last two, that is destructive and vacuum distillation, these are carried out in absence of air. So coming on to the processes that occur during the distillation. There are three major processes that occur whenever we expose the raw material towards distillation. First is hydrodiffusion, second is hydrolysis, and third is the decomposition by heat. Now hydrodiffusion is nothing but the diffusion of water into the raw material or the plant matrix, which allows heating up of the oil cells or the oil along with the water. Now once the water enter into the plant matrix, it also causes the hydrolysis of certain constituents such as esters or alcohols, such as esters which convert hydrolysis of esters give rise to alcohols and acids. And if this process is again continuously being heated, because distillation is there, then decomposition by heat is also there of certain constituent. And all these processes, they occur simultaneously during this process, thereby affecting the overall quality of the oil in terms of odor as well as in terms of its color. So one has to be very particular whenever the raw material is being exposed to the distillation. So in order to improve the yield as well as quality of the oil, minimum temperature, or one should maintain the temperature as low as possible, because in distillation you have to boil the raw material along with water. You have to boil the water. So once the water start boiling, we have to decrease the temperature and we have to maintain the temperature as low as possible, or as low as it is required, just to continue that distillation process. Minimum quantity of water should be used during the distillation, because it can enhance the hydrolysis of the constituent. So sufficient amount of water, or the amount of water that is sufficient just to wet your sample or just to submerge your sample, that should be used for distillation. And the plant material should be thoroughly comminuted, or the size reduction should be properly done, and it should be properly packed into the distillation still before the start of the distillation, for obvious reason, as I told you, that the lacunas should not be there, air pockets should not be formed by improper or non-uniform packing of the raw material. So friends, in my next lecture, I will continue with the different distillation techniques that are used to extract volatile oils. Thank you.